Good morning, everybody. And my name is Lisa McDonald. I've met the majority of you on the call, but there are still some folks that I don't know. So welcome this morning to our webinar. I just want to provide a little bit of background and context to this tourism destination development project. That's a new and exciting initiative that we're embarking on. And I'm actually speaking to you wearing two hats. I work with the Newfoundland and Labrador Tourism Board, who I'll talk a little bit about in just a moment, but I'm also here as the representative for Hospitality Newfoundland and Labrador, and I'm working on behalf of Hospitality Newfoundland and Labrador on this particular project. Hospitality Newfoundland and Labrador, the Department of Tourism, Culture and Recreation, with all of our DMOs, and in this particular region, the Eastern DMO, have kind of joined forces with some of our other partners, the Department of Innovation, Business and Rural Development and ACOA, to embark on really a project over the course of the next 3 years that will look at tourism destination development in Newfoundland and Labrador. When Uncommon Potential, which is the vision for our tourism industry, was launched in 2009. It outlined 7 particular areas that we needed to focus on in order to grow our industry. The goal of Uncommon Potential, of that strategy, is to double annual tourism revenues to $1.6 billion by the year 2020. That's why we call it Vision 2020. And we're well on our way to do that. In February of this year, Minister French announced that we had actually hit the $1 billion mark in terms of tourism spending. So we're actually a little bit ahead of where we forecasted. So we're actually doing some really wonderful work in this industry and have been for quite some time. And now we're kind of working together in a new and more integrated way and collaboratively to kind of get our industry where we'd like it to be by the year 2020. When our vision was launched in 2009, it was this wonderful framework. It's a fantastic strategy, coming together of industry and government, saying this is exactly where we need to focus on. These are the opportunities and challenges ahead of us. But who's actually going to champion this particular vision, and who's really going to look after it over the course of the next 10 years? The Newfoundland and Labrador Tourism Board was established at that time, and that board is really there its mandate is to advise on the implementation of the vision. And it's comprised of industry members. We just recently, as of last week or the week before, had the appointment of a new chair, and that's Barry Rogers. Some of you will know Barry. Barry is a owner-operator of Iceberg Quest. He has some whale watching and iceberg finding tours, as well as a host of other products and attractions and services he offers, and is located at Twillingate and St. John's. On that board, though, we have Barry as well as 4 representatives from Hospitality Newfoundland Labrador, industry representatives. We have our 5 destination management organizations represented there. So for today, this webinar is focused on the Eastern region. Clyde Wells, who is the chair of the Eastern Destination Management Organization, sits on the tourism board and represents the region there. And of course then we have 4 of our government representatives there, folks, 2 representatives from the Department of Tourism, Culture, Recreation, 1 from IBRD and 1 from ACOA. So essentially this board about 4 years ago when it came together, it started to look at the vision and say, what exactly are we going to move forward with first? Where do we begin with this wonderful framework that we have in front of us, and how do we start the growth of the industry? So the two primary areas that the board has been focused on and continues to be, and how it's related to this particular project, it recognized that we needed to get the organization of the industry a little bit more sound and the foundation underneath us. That's where the DMOs and a lot of the evolution of their role has happened over the last few years. And if anybody has any questions, I can speak to that at a later time, but I'd like to kind of focus in on what we're here today to talk about. But the other key area that the board focused in on was number 4 of the strategic directions listed in that strategy. 7 strategic directions in total. Number 4 is entitled Product Development. So that's kind of where we are here today. Over the last 2 years, there's been a lot of planning and research put into how are we going to develop a strategy for ourselves around product development or destination development, and a steering committee was essentially formed of that tourism board, and Scott Andrews, who's normally my right hand on this particular project, as Chris mentioned earlier, he is actually not with us today, and he is the co-lead from the Department of Tourism, but he really took up the reins at about a year or so ago and started to lead on a steering committee, which myself and some of the people on this call and other stakeholders across the province sit on that particular committee. And as a group, we looked at research that was being done in other countries and other provinces, and we looked at other different types of models that existed out there with regards to product development or destination development. So a lot of effort went into trying to determine what's the best fit for Newfoundland and Labrador. And that's really where we're here today. This particular model is the approach that we've decided to embark on and continue on down the road. And Richard has a wealth of knowledge, and his counterpart, Nancy Arsenault. Kathy's going to introduce them in just a moment. But it's an exciting initiative. We have spent the last couple of weeks now getting out on the ground, speaking with operators, speaking with industry about this. We're just off the heels of completing 4 public sessions the week before last. They were held in Ferryland, Bay Roberts, Port Rexton, and Marystown. And today we're here offering another opportunity for people to feed into this process, to offer their suggestions, to offer their comments, and really provide a forum for them to input into this particular initiative. So on that note, I'm going to pass it over to Chris Tuck. He's Scott's fill-in for the day, and he's going to bring some greetings on behalf of the department. And then Chris will pass it over to Kathy Stacy, who is our destination lead on this particular piece, and she'll introduce our presenter here today.
Thank you, Lisa. As Lisa mentioned, my boss, actually, Scott Andrews, who's with the Product Development Division, is the co-lead on this project. From a departmental perspective, we're very encouraged with the way it's a mesh. It's not just the department, it's not just H&L, and it's not just the EDMO. It's actually the group with industry and the public sector as well at the table to be able to move the initiative forward. It's a collective approach, so it's not just someone from the top down saying, you do this, you will do this. It's an approach that we're hoping will get all input, and it'll get the information that we need to actually strategize as to how we move the whole industry forward. We're really receptive to the piece, and we're really excited about the initiative and how it's going to go forward. It's going to be a rewarding piece, and we're really excited to see that the Eastern EMO has actually stepped up to the plate to be able to help us shape and mold the process. And you have the opportunity to set the direction and the process for the rest of the province as well, because they'll be coming on stream after the piece, which I think is brilliant. actually, and it gives you a real opportunity to set some direction and identify some priorities. If there's any questions that you have in the process, I'll be happy to answer them. If I'm not able to assist you, I'm sure that Scott, Lisa, or Kathy would certainly be able to point you in the right direction. And without further ado, I'm going to hand you over to Kathy Stacy.
Thanks very much, Chris, and good morning once again, everybody. It's a pleasure as the Executive Director of the Eastern DMO to have our region and our destination be the first to go through the process. When we set up the organization, and of course we're the newest in the link of 5 DMOs across the province, so when we set up the organization, one of the things that we very early on recognized was that we do need to do a destination development plan. And so we're very pleased that the Eastern region through this process will be the first to kind of set the stage for a provincial destination plan. And I have the honor this morning of introducing to you Richard Innes, who is the consultant. He is with Brain Trust. And he and Nancy Arsenault of Tourism Cafe have partnered to develop this process specifically for Newfoundland and Labrador. Richard and Nancy have a number of years experience in destination development planning and in experiential development. We are very, very lucky to have the best in the business helping us with this process. And I'm very pleased to introduce you to Richard today. One of the things that Richard will talk to you about this morning, for those of you who are listening in, is the importance of working groups and the validation stage. We will be looking for people who we hope will come forward to be a part of the working group for Eastern, to help validate the observations and the findings, and to help us identify the recommendations coming out of those observations. So I'm going to pass it over to Richard. Richard, it's great to have you here again. We just got off the road doing our public sessions. We had a good group of people come out to those sessions, and it's great to have you back this morning to present again for another webinar for us.
Jerry Dick here. Can I just ask a question?
Mm-hmm.
Just kind of curious if you could tell us a little bit about how the meetings went or what happened there, because I've sensed that in all regions there isn't total receptivity, and to be honest, we've sort of gotten caught in the crossfire of that to some degree.
I'll probably pop in here. Thanks, Jerry, for the comment. I think what we'll do is we'll probably let Kathy continue to introduce Richard, and then we'll start the session. And then before we start the session, maybe we can do a little recap of how those sessions went. And myself and Kathy and Richard can probably feed in on those each.
Sure.
Okay. Do you want to do that now, Lisa, or do you want to wait? Is that what you
I think I'd like to hear from Richard for a moment, and maybe he can do some opening on this. I'd like to get the actual project and the webinar here today started, and then kind of focus in on what we're here today and get the information out, as opposed to kind of focusing on the comments that we heard yet. As we go throughout the presentation, Richard will be very knowledgeable about letting everybody know exactly, some of the perceptions that already exist, maybe some of the assumptions that were already had, and then he can provide some information on that.
Yes, I agree. So I'm just going to, without any further delay, pass it over to Richard. Richard, good morning.
Good morning. Thanks, Kathy, and thanks everyone for taking the time to be part of the session this morning. And Jerry, I will sort of try to give you a sense of what happened. I guess bottom line, we were thrilled with the reaction and response because the purpose of those sessions, the webinars we held prior to that, and then this webinar is actually to get a sense of, first of all, communicate what we're doing so that people understand the process, the background, how we're going about it, but then obviously getting feedback and input as we go through. So we got some valuable input through the process, and so I know that Dr. Nancy Arsenal and I were just thrilled with the outcomes of that. But this morning what I want to do is really give you a sense of how we got here and what the project is all about. We're going to talk about the approach and the specific process, and then talk about the timing. Throughout the session, we are going to give you an opportunity to ask questions, and given the fact that this is recorded, that's your call if you want to ask questions. There will also be a slide that will come up that will give you Kathy's particulars in terms of her coordinates. So if you're more comfortable sending Kathy an email or giving her a call after the call, because this is being recorded, then we'd encourage you to do that. But there is lots of time for a lot of air in the presentation to get your input and feedback. And then obviously you can it's been my pleasure to work with the H&L folks and TCR folks from the beginning a year or so ago, and begin to talk to them about destination development and some of the experiences that we've had across the country, and that helped shape how we got to where we are today. So really building off of that direction, strategic direction number 4 from the Vision 2020 document to really focus on product development was the foundation of where we began. One of the things that we need to realize right away is that there is, we think, a requirement to shift our terminology. We've been talking about destination development and product development, but we have come to the conclusion that what we really want to be talking about is experience development. Because as the Canadian Tourism Commission has concluded, based on a lot of work that they've done, when we begin to use terms like product, we think that a product is what you buy, but a tourism experience is what you remember. And so we are in the memory creating business. I know that each one of you who are involved in meeting guests, one way or another, you would know that giving a great experience is part of what you do every day. And so our focus is going to be on experience development. And really, that means that we need to shift our focus from a supply mentality, which is really one of building and selling products and packages, to begin to develop what we do and develop our destination, develop our particular operations, whether they be a for-profit or not-for-profit business within the tourism sector, through the eyes of the traveler. And so this project has now become known as the Tourism Destination Visitor Appeal Appraisal. And that's how we'll start. That's how we'll refer to the process and the project as we go forward. And that's an interesting or an important distinction from moving from that supply mentality to one of a sort of more customer-centric approach to what we're doing. The shift in terminologies is required among the tourism services and attractions within the province, and in particular the eastern region, because we know that we need to engage visitors in a series of authentic, memorable travel activities that are revealed to them over time, that engage their senses, are inherently personal, and make connections on a number of levels. And that really is the definition of experiential tourism. And many of you will know or know Dr. Nancy Oshnow's name. She's been associated with the Grossmorn Institute's Sustainable Tourism for a number of years, presenting the Edge of the Wedge tourism conference or tourism training session for the last, I think, 7 or 8 years, and where our folks come in and learn about how to begin to develop these experiences that focus on this kind of definition of tourism. And so it's with her knowledge and background that we've come to this point to create, as Kathy said, this customized process of destination development for Newfoundland and Labrador, and specifically out of the gate for the eastern region. So as a result of that change in understanding and terminology, we need to undertake an appraisal of the region and determine its appeal on a number of visitor-centric dimensions. This appraisal is a collection of data to inform what's being done well, because a lot of things are being done well, and where destination. So that's sort of the bottom line of where we want to go. The appraisal is going to be done on a regional basis, beginning with the eastern region and then rolling out throughout the province over the next 3 years. Really, what we're looking for is some new information, which we refer to as primary research. Those are all of the things that are contained in reports and studies and plans that have been done. We'll conduct some telephone interviews, may have been wanting to do for a number of years, but just has not gotten over the bump of whatever it could be, financing or getting everybody in the same room together and what we need to do. We want to get a sense of what those things are. And then we'll be spending some time on websites, TripAdvisor accounts, looking at that important perspective from the customer's lens. And then we'll also use existing information ahead in terms of some of the data that you have on that you collect on a regular basis. Your TDMS system, the Tourism Destination Management System, is an amazing database of all of those folks who are involved in tourism in one way, shape, or form within the province. In our experience, there's very few who have such a comprehensive database, and that's a database comprised of information that those folks in the business actually supply. So they input into that process. So that's a solid base of information. It may not be 100% complete, but it's a good start. We've got the food and beverage database, we've got a number of visitor publications, and then a variety of websites that talk about tourism and where the businesses and organizations, services, and attractions that are involved in tourism are located and where the information about that. We've developed 3 specific tools to aid in this process, and we've got the process overview, and if you haven't seen that document already, we participated in the public sessions. So everybody who participated in those sessions received both this PowerPoint presentation and the process overview document. So if that's something you're interested in getting, I suggest that you write down Kathy's email address when it comes up, and she will ensure that you get that. We've created a research framework, which was really the roadmap to guide the process and what we'll be collecting. And then the data collection team, the collecting the data will use this workbook to populate the information, populate it with information that they find. It's supplemented by a comprehensive Excel spreadsheet that captures all of that data. So these are 3 brand new tools that we've customized for our use here. So the question is, why are we doing this? And really simply to understand Newfoundland and Labrador's appeal from the customer perspective, to inform stakeholders about their strengths in delivering memorable travel experiences, and just based on our work already, we know that operators both in the public realm as well as in private sector business who are delivering memorable experiences now. And so the point here is to really understand what those are all about and even get those things to the next level. And then there's the area where development is really needed to enhance the destination and individual tourism services and attractions in terms of their competitiveness and their appeal. So while we will work recognize what's already happening, where we may have critical mass in terms of some of the experiences that we're delivering. We'll also get a sense of where are the gaps in terms of what we're doing in order high levels of appeal in order to grow tourism into the future. We've had a lot of experience in this type of work, and although this is a customized process, we've used a number of different formats in terms of destination development. We've had the opportunity to do over 33 destination development processes within the province of Ontario. And just to give you a sense of where this leads, I'm going to just talk about a couple of It's a smaller region of the province of Ontario. It is an island in Lake Ontario, a very fertile area, and over the last 10 or 12 years has emerged as a wine growing area, a number of restaurateurs with some fame in the Toronto market have actually relocated to Prince Edward County and opened restaurants. Building on some of the great local food that's found in that particular region. But, and they began to understand the opportunities associated with tourism. And so some 4 or 5 years ago, we were invited to come in and do a destination development process on behalf of the Economic Development Department there in Prince Edward County. And really, when we went in, we began to understand through this process, a similar process to what we're going to be doing with you, that there were a number of assets that were available that would have a high interest to the visitor market. The problem is that they were either underdeveloped or underperforming, and for the most part, those involved were working in silos. They were not in all working together. And so one of the byproducts of the destination development process in Prince Edward County was really getting everyone to understand the opportunities and also understand where the gaps were in what they were doing day in and day out in order to grow their visitor numbers, their visitor revenue. In fact, when we completed the process, the Economic Development Director for Prince Edward County said that the destination development process did a number of things, but the most important thing is that it was the rallying cry for that particular industry, that particular piece of geography, to get everybody understanding what was needed, where their strengths were, and what was involved to get to the next level. 2 products or experiences emerged one, taking advantage of the rich a number of folks came who were in that particular sector came together to create the Taste Trail. Similarly, they had a number of artisans and craftspeople who were involved in practicing their crafts in their garages and behind, whether it be a working studio or in galleries in the small towns. But there was critical mass around that particular area. And so as a result of the process, we identified that critical mass. That group came together the tourism industry in Ontario and really seen as a leader. But it all began with understanding what they had, what they needed to do to become more competitive and to increase their appeal, and then work together on a number of fronts to make that happen. So, as a result of what we're doing here, we want to inform industry. Again, both those not-for-profit and for-profit and government folks how to create innovative, authentic, and new tourism experiences. Tourism attractors and infrastructure needs to be enhanced, but the bottom line of all of this work and the effort that's being generated on your behalf and as part of what government's doing, what H&L is doing, the tourism board's involved in, is really about increasing tourism visitation and revenues to all of those involved within the tourism industry. So I'm going to stop here, and if there are some questions, I'll take them. But again, if you're more comfortable to get in touch with
just one question about how the appraisal works. I mean, is that something that sort of you do as a team and you come in, or is it sort of a combination of you working with the local players in kind of assessing or appraising themselves? Could you talk a little bit more how that process works?
Yeah. And it's a bit of both and we're going to get into that detail in the next section. Okay. Oh, another question? Okay, well, let me move on then. Into this.
Richard.
So, in essence, what we have done is we've created a 4-phased approach. And really, we're calling this a pilot, but it's really a pilot in the sense is that we will learn as we go, and we'll fine-tune and shape based on input we've already received, and we will continue to receive, but we're rolling this out in the eastern region, with the other regions being rolled out beginning in late 2013. But we've got 4 phases. There's a our consolidation of all that data, and then the beginning, and then the interpretation of what we're learning and seeing and finding. And then the final phase is really implementation based on our findings and communicating across a broad spectrum of tools and to a broad spectrum of folks who have been involved in the process to make sure everyone's on the same page. The final piece is the back end of that particular stage in terms of getting everything ready in order to embark on this journey. And I call it a important stage in terms of understanding the nuances that are present within the eastern region, and getting some of the input and feedback from the various regions that we visited, or sub-regions that we visited during our public session. But let's begin with the project team, and both Lisa spoke to the project sponsors. The lead sponsors on the project are H&L and the Department of Tourism, Culture, and Recreation, and supporting roles by IBRD and ACOA. Scott Andrews, and that's who we've been working with thus far at a high level in terms of shaping this particular project. As Lisa mentioned, we've got the project steering committee, and she indicated the representatives of who was involved in that, and they've been important in terms of in the last year really understanding where the opportunity was and helping shape how, as a province, you began to undertake this particular aspect of destination development. The project manager and the assessment Dr. Nancy Arsenal from the Tourism Cafe, that who really makes up the team who are guiding this project, designing it, and then actually directly involved in the assessment or the appraisal. The regional destination project lead is the executive director from the destination management organization, and in this case process, has been an active and enthusiastic participant, and I think just spending the week with her, I've got a sense that she's quite excited about the opportunities and where this is going to take the region, the eastern region going forward. We've assembled a data collection team, and that data collection team at the heart is really 4 senior department visitor information staff folks who will be dedicated to the task of gathering particular elements of data related to the appraisal. And so they're at the core. We've also realized as we've gone through this process that we'll supplement that with others. And in fact, I'll talk about a particular area where we want to get all of those studies and reports and things that are on the books already. Do that is really H&L and TCR, because they're aware of what's going on. They have contacts within IBRD, and others, the municipalities, etc. And so they're going to take up that particular aspect of data collection. So we've got a number of different entities sort of collecting the data that we need in order to complete the appraisal. An important piece of the work that we've done, and we've learned that we can do all of the data collection we want. We can come up with our findings and generate the final piece of the puzzle. Our recommendations probably will not be successful being implemented. And therefore, the advisory committee, the appraisal advisory committee, is an important piece of that puzzle. And what we're going to do is take at the base, at the core, the existing advisory or industry working group committees that are already assembled within the eastern region. We're going to use those folks as sort of the first part of our validation and process. We want to supplement that group with others. And so once I've gone through the presentation, you may think, hey, or I'd like to be involved. If that's the case, or you know someone who should be involved, because they're going to add to the richness of the data collection process, for example, you want to get a hold of Kathy and let her know your interest in doing that, because it's an important piece, because this is the group that we'll communicate with on a regular basis, monthly, every 5 or 6 weeks, to say, here's where we are in the process. findings. Here's our observations. What do you think? Have we captured everything? Are we missing anything? And they will feed back and provide that filter to us that will ensure that we've done our best possible job in understanding the current situation within the eastern region. And then also prioritize the actions coming out of the work. And that action leads to what the final piece of the project team is, and that's the implementation task team. So if I take you back to my Prince Edward County example, those artisans, those craftspeople who were situated throughout Prince Edward County actually came together as a result of their common success as it relates to practicing their craft. They came together as a result of the process, and they became what we would call an implementation task team. They knew better than anyone what they had, and so with some guidance, we're able to ultimately come up with the Arts Trail concept and everything that's behind that to make it a new and exciting tourism experience within Prince Edward County. So the implementation task team are really a group of people who come together for the specific purpose of responding to and acting on the specific recommendation. And they're made up of the local not-for-profit or for-profit stake to get that particular recommendation moving forward. In terms of industry engagement, in the project staging phase, we've completed a number of those steps. Today really is the final piece of that puzzle. We held webinars with the field staff and advisory committee on May 16th. We had our initial Visitor Information Center staff orientation on May 21st. We presented the overview of the project to the Tourism Board on May 22nd and got a very good response and endorsement that from a Tourism Board perspective, we were that week in May. And those proved, as I said, to be very informative. We had some communities where they had some definite interest and opinion related to what needed to happen. But standing in front of those groups in each of those 4 communities and representing 4 regions or sub-regions of the province, I came away with a good understanding of what we needed to do in order to some adjustments to our process as we've gone along. One of the things I'll mention now is that we heard loud and clear from 1 or 2 of the subregions in particular. There was a concern that we really wouldn't get a sense of what was happening on the ground. Because again, the data collection process is going to be using a number of resources, for example, and because we're interested in getting the visitor perspective in terms of understanding so what in fact we've done as a result of hearing that, we've created basically a survey mechanism, and that will go out to industry and to everyone who's involved in the next few weeks, and everyone will have an opportunity to feed into the process by providing specific things that those organizations are doing within the business, in their business, presenting what they see as some of the challenges in terms of doing what they do, and actually providing some ideas. If someone has an idea, we think we should do this or this. We've created that mechanism, and you'll hear more about that as we go forward. And you will all have an opportunity to input into that process. So that was just one of the things we heard through the public sessions, and so we've created that mechanism to get a sense, to make sure everybody has an opportunity to put their 2 cents, if you will, into the process. And that will all be factored into our findings and outcome as we go forward. We're having our webinar session today just to make sure those folks who were not able to attend the 4 public sessions, that everyone had an opportunity to hear the presentation and to provide some feedback in one way, shape, or form. We're going to be presenting updates throughout the project implementation phase through the EDMO website, through H&L, the findings observation once the appraisal is complete, through another series of public sessions. So once again, we're not going forward with anything until we've actually completed that validation process with those involved in the tourism sector. Okay, I'll stop and give you a sense. I give you an opportunity again to ask some questions. because what I'm going to do now is going to go into each of the dimensions of the information we'll be gathering, and how we'll go about doing that.
Richard, I think Joan is typing something down in the chat window. So maybe we'll give her a minute. I'm sorry, but I joined late. Who will be doing the data collection?
Okay. The data collection will be done by a number of sources. At the heart of the data collection process, some of the real nuts and bolts data, because of a lot of the information that's available through TDMS and what have you, PCR and the research department will be populating much of our database. That will be supplemented by visitor information staff, dedicated folks who will be spending time over the next probably 6 have taken on the task of connecting with municipalities, with IBRD, ACOA, others who have been involved in maybe feasibility studies, those kind of things, in order that we get that kind of information. And then the final piece really on the data collection is having this survey, which will allow everyone involved to be able to give their, to contribute their thoughts from a customer perspective, the opportunities that they see, from their perspective, and then some of the maybe larger areas of opportunity related to the broader area there, particularly the community, their sub-region, what have you. So that's really a quick snapshot of what data collection will look like. Okay, let me move on. So the next phase is this data collection piece. Related to data collection. We'll look at those reports, plans, and studies. That's a dimension of information. We'll look at the visitor dimensions, and I'm going to go into detail of each one of these. The product and market dimension, the sustainability dimension, and then the measures of success dimension. So 5 particular areas of focus. The first one is really this reports, plans, and studies. I've given you a sense of what we're after. We know that there's a lot of information, a lot of work already done as it relates to development opportunities within the Eastern region. And what we projects that have an opportunity to impact tourism going forward. We want to know what's out there. We found in our experience, for example, we did some work in Gananoque, Ontario, and in our data collection process, someone mentioned that, 5 years ago we did a waterfront revitalization study. And I said, oh, that's interesting. Does anybody have that report? Oh, I'm sure we can dig up a copy. Our appraisal of the destination revealed that the waterfront was one of their core assets, community located on the St. Lawrence River and the Thousand Islands, but the waterfront was not very appealing, not very attractive, and so we came to 5 years earlier, had done a feasibility study, but it had gone nowhere and was sitting on a shelf somewhere. But as a result of looking at that particular study, we realized that it contained, for the most part, the ingredients for waterfront revitalization to make that destination more appealing and more competitive, and therefore we simply took it, adopted most of the recommendations that were in that feasibility waterfront and become more appealing and more competitive. So that's what we're looking for. The other thing is these things in the pipeline, the things that we want to do, but just haven't been able to garner the support in one way, shape, or form. We want to know what those are. And again, this particular phase of information will be done by Scott and Lisa and others who have direct connections to the people who would have access to these and introduce into the destination development process, because in most of the processes that we've been involved in, ones we've created, ones we've worked with, it has lacked the consumer perspective for two reasons. One is because the kind of visitor information, data, the research around sophisticated visitor research. And so your exit surveys, both of domestic travelers and travelers from away, will form a basis of our understanding of the customer. And so when we look at visitor dimensions, we'll be looking at two pieces. The research that's available, which gives us that demographic, psychographic, satisfaction levels, those kind of things of what people experience when they come to Newfoundland and Labrador. And capture the voice of the customer. And it's not necessarily, and this is important, it's not necessarily understanding that the customer had a good or bad experience, or that, you know, I stayed in an accommodation, it was really nice, except that the fixture in the bathroom was broken and wasn't operating, was made our visit a little more challenging. It's not the understanding the visit are creating places to have conversations with the visitor. And what we want to be able to determine when we look across the country of how that's happening, a lot of times those the tourism folks, the tourism industry, are not engaging with the customer. And so with the advent of websites and blogs, things like TripAdvisor and Facebook, people are talking about their experience. We want to be able to understand is that if they are saying something, is the tourism industry responding? Are they having conversations with these visitors? Because if they're not, we're at a disadvantage. But if they are, we're at an advantage because the voice of the customer and understanding that is a critical nuance to the visitor dimension of our appraisal process. We did when we were doing the Visitor Information Center staff training, we took some examples of businesses and organizations, both the sort of historical